My name's Anthony Pascariello. I topped Yu-Gi-Oh! Nationals in 2011 and 3 YCSs back-to-back in 2012. Although I stopped playing in 2013, I've rediscovered my passion for the game through older formats and love sharing ideas about how to play. This is Yu-Gi-Oh! Masterclass. I'm by no means a Yu-Gi-Oh! Master. What's going on, duelists? Welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Masterclass. Following up my last tourney report video, I think it'd be a good idea while I'm still really heavily on this deck to do a little masterclass with it. So, welcome to Diva Frogs. This is Rognak's build that he won a really big charity event with. I absolutely love it. I haven't changed a thing about it because I feel like I am not good enough of a deck builder to look at this and say, well, I would do this, I would do this. Like, no, there's a lot of synergy in here. The ratios are good, and I think it's very important to test a lot with a deck before you do decide to make any decisions like that, especially if it was built by someone who really understands deck building, especially someone that understands this archetype so well. Basically, Frog Engine, right? Your swaps, your tree boards, your substitutes, your dupes. This deck plays Unifrog and Flip-Flop Frog, which are both really good. 3 Caius, 1 Raioh as opposed to 3. We're moving a little ways away from typical Frog Monarchs here and doing different things that all end up being really cool and really synergistic, and just they give you so many options and so much control, unlike a lot of other decks that don't give you control like this deck can, and it seems endless, and it's very consistent and it's very good. I'm right now obsessed with this deck, and that's what I love about Yu-Gi-Oh! So much, is that there are so many different cool decks, and I'm just such a nerd for the game. I love playing every different deck and learning them inside and out, as you can see with all the masterclass videos that I do. But Frogs are one of my favorite decks of all time, definitely my favorite deck in Edison, so I want to try to be the best Frog player that I can be, which is why I've been really heavily testing this deck specifically lately. So yeah, just 1 Raioh, and then instead of 2 more Raiohs, we just have 1 Mobius. He's a sleeper card, very surprising. I don't think any of my opponents ever expect him, and he's a water monster, so he ties in very well with Moray of Greed. You have Gores, you have your 3 Divas, and then you have Mermaid Archer and Spine Gilman, which are 2 Sea Serpent monsters that you can get out with Deep Sea Diva. They're both level 3, and Archer has a quirky little effect that lets you equip most of the time a Treeborn Frog, but a level 3 or lower monster will equip to this and boost its attack up to 2,000, and if this were to be destroyed, that equip dies instead. And Gilman gains all fish, sea serpent, and aqua monsters 400 attack, which comes in handy sometimes if you have dupe lock. All that those effects that don't seem to come up very often actually do, they're important to know. Because sometimes they do come up and they are relevant. So, heavy MST, brain control 1 for 1, 2 soul exchange econ, pretty good, solid spell lineup, and 3 Moray of Greed and 2 salvage. These cards are they just help you play the game the way you want to play. Salvage is so good for so many reasons, not just because it works very nicely with Moray of Greed, but because if turn 1 you don't open Swap Frog, you open Substitute. By turn 2 you could do a bunch of cheeky stuff with Salvage, fueling that engine to just get your dupe lock even more consistently by turn 2. It gets back Divas, it gets back Swap Frogs that you could discard and special summon if you need that little extra oomph. It just ignites so many different plays. This card by itself is so good. Moray, there are a lot of monsters in this deck and a lot of cards that you most of the time don't want to see in your hand when they're better off in the deck. Moray helps you. Is there any other card that lets you draw 3? There are very few, right? So putting back 2 monsters you don't want to see and drawing 3, it's like drawing 50% of a hand. And the card's at 3, and it's almost never dead. So much synergy in these 35 cards, and if that's not enough, yes, we get to splash some trap cards in this deck as well. Threatening Roar, another surprise factor kind of card. I love cards like that very much. You set it, you feel super safe. They're scenarios where you're not going to be able to drop a Monarch and bounce it back with Swap Frog, although you might have a Swap Frog in your hand. Threatening Roar. If you do summon Swap Frog and bounce a Monarch back and leave the Swap Frog on the field, Threatening Roar protects it. It just stops against the Trunade, the Heavy Storm, the Cold Wave. I mean, all the destruction back row when your opponent's like thinking about going for game, you just completely put that on halt for a turn, which is nice, and most of the time that turn makes all the difference. Raigeki Break, super chainable. Look at the synergy. Pitch water monsters you don't need, salvage them back to your hand, or you can pitch anything, which is the beauty of it. But the fact that you can pitch stuff that you can get right back, or stuff that you prefer to have in the graveyard, is really nice. And Mirror Force is Mirror Force. A lot of people don't expect to see Mirror Force in a Frog deck. This is a wonderful combination of 40 cards, I will say that. The extra deck, the only things I really will know are 2 Canister. I think it's very important. Everything else is pretty good. The fact that you can make Dark End with this deck with Caius and Diva is really nice. And the side deck is pretty solid. Deck Devi, Canister, turn 1, Diva, set Deck Devi. That's a 2-card Deck Devi, right? You just need to open Diva. That's so powerful in so many decks. Burial, obviously, for the Crows that are coming. Vanity's Fiend is just the best. The game ender. Crow is insane. Dust and Bottomless. I would potentially... I haven't run into many Gladiator Beasts, but I feel like Dust isn't enough. I feel like Bottomless and Cyber Dragons are very good against them, too, so that's why I haven't, touched the side deck at all. And unlike other Masterclass videos where I play some stuff live, I'm actually going to jump into a couple replays of other games, if that's okay with everybody. So the first game I want to jump into, and this might be a shorter video, maybe we'll do a live game as well. But this fast forward button makes everything go pretty quickly. So going first, very nice. So I'm not going to fly through these games, but I am going to go at a little bit of a quicker tempo, I think, just to, I don't know, move things along, I think would be nice. So Summon Swap Frog and Sentryborn, pretty good, right? The usual. We don't have to set anything. We have Gores. They might attack right into it. We want Treeborn back next turn. Look at this hand. So good, right? Nice coverage of everything. My opponent opens pretty nice. We see a Glow Moss. Interesting tech. But Strato, Starcard, Miracle Fusion, Wing Blast. Pretty solid. They're going to Rotify Armageddon Knight. They're going to summon Stratos. They're going to get Mally. They're going to swing. I'm going to drop the Gores, no problem on that on 18. And now, I don't have to space this, but I'm thinking if they set a Torrential when I get my Treeborn back, I'm going to lose my Gores. They're going to lose Stratos and Torrential, but Stratos got them a card, and it's really not... I don't want to lose my Gores like that. So I do decide to space here, and it is very arguable. I could also opt not to get Treeborn Frog back and just turn one or both of these to attack mode and start swinging. So I space it, they chain Wing Blast. I get Treeborn back. I send Treeborn to special summon the Swap Frog. Sending Substitoad. And I do that so I can normal summon the Substitoad. Yes, Gores is lost in the deck, and that may seem a little interesting, but being able to send Substitoad with a Swap Frog summon is so nice, because you pitch Treeborn, special summon this, send Substitoad, salvage them both back, and now look at our board, how nice this looks. Watch it come together as we have an 18 attack mode token. Yes, we kind of went minus on the MST, but look at the options that we have now. Look at what this end board is going to be like. And as we're doing things, it's important to note this is the most damage, by the way. Swap Frog is always, out of all the frogs, going to deal the most damage. So we're going to get that off the field, swing for 21. We're going to make sure we use Swap Frog's effect to gain that extra normal summon, because it's better to have the Swap Frog in the hand than the Treeborn. So we're going to bounce him back, normal summon Treeborn, and continue this combo as we see fit. And it's going to end with Dupe Lock and Flip Flop Frog. Now, How nice is that? We went first. We have 6 to their 5 when they draw, and we have 2 copies of the Ultimate +1, which in this deck doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's so nice to have your Treeborns ready to go. So we set Threatening in case they want to do something crazy. I don't really know what kind of craziness they could do. So they send Summon Armageddonite, send Plague, remove from alley. And they make a very interesting play here. I was kind of thinking they were going to make Dark End Dragon. So the Mally kind of doesn't do much on the field. They make Raioh instead and send the Glowmoss to send the Dupe Frog back, which is completely okay with us. We're going to Threatening right here as they try to attack the second Dupe Frog, which is now they have to go more minus, right? Bryonicking Dupe Frogs is so minus. Sometimes when you're playing a sort of zombie deck or any sort of Diva kind of deck that uses this engine, Bryonic usually just doesn't do very well against Dupe Frog. So now look at the position. They have a Mally they did nothing with, a Dark Arm that's on its way, right? Still not close there, and a Bryonic that he has to just leave on the field. And I mean, that's an insane top deck. We're getting Treeborn back. But are we really, even if we don't draw this, we're still in such a good spot. Flip-Flop Frog includes itself whenever it's flipped. Not just flip summon, it means when it's attacked, it counts itself plus all the other frogs you have on the field. So they're really forced to bounce it back with Raioh, right? In here, we're going to Tribute Treeborn for Caius, get that Dark out of there. We know we could run over Raioh less. I mean, it's tough. He already has a hero. Could make an argument for removing the only water that he has. I think either one are fit. Either one would be fitting, rather. And we're going to get Unifrog out of there. I feel like at this point in the game we don't really need it. We don't want to draw into it, although it is nice to keep some water monsters in the deck because we haven't seen a moray of Greed yet. Swap Frog, bounce the Caius back, set the Raigeki break just in case they do anything crazy, and they realize that is it. So good game 1 for us. Didn't need the Caius. Our opponent probably could have played that a little differently. Flying through this is nice. Convert Contact. Probably the first time it's ever been played against me. Now look at our opponent's hand. This is a damn good hand, right, in my book. Rhoda, Allure, Mind Crush, Gores. Very good hand. They summon Armageddonite. Not sure if they play Infernal Prodigy, but I think you can make an argument for Rhoda, Stratos, Infernal, Allure, try to get some more traps going on. They don't do that. Now look at this hand, dude. This is a stacked hand, super stacked. And we have options here. We have a few. I Brain Control right off the rip. Now they could Mind Crush and Qual Substitute, and that would be amazing. But we're covered because we have Vanity's Fiend. So we could still tribute this and do pretty well. I could just set the Dust and pass and let them do more stuff. But I'm going to Brain Control, and I think they might think I'm just going to go for a Monarch play here, Rise of Caius or something, so they're not going to Mind Crush. And I'm able to summon Substitute and get this going. And I finish my Dupe Block, I set my Dust Tornado, I set Raigeki Break, and I pass. Now my opponent draws. They set 2 back row. They set 1 back row, I'm sorry. End phase, I'm going to Dust Tornado the old one. They're going to think about it for a second. I do the old one just in case it is MST, even though the new one is MST, and they space this. I'm just going to chain it and pop the new one. That's my thought process to clear up that back row. Just once I get both of these out of here, we get Treeborn back. Unless they have 2 DD Crows, I'm going to have Dupe Block and Vanity's Fiend. They're not really going to have much to get over that. So they think about it. They decide not to do it. I get rid of both of them, and just as planned, we are going to be able to do this. And we top deck a salvage too, just in case, you know. Look at our stacked graveyard: Swap Frog, Substitute, Dupe Frog's already on the field, but we could get Flip Flop Frog later on if we end up needing Diva, or drawing it and using it after Vanity's Fiend leaves the field. If it ever does, then this is a really nice card just to have in our hand. Just a free +1 that gets a Diva back potentially, that's also going to go plus, or Substitute, that usually always goes plus because Treeborn was free. And look at our opponent's hand now, it was so good. Gores is dead, this is nothing, this is nothing, this is hopefully going to get him something, this is nothing. Vanity's Fiend is so good. They're going to Rhoda, thin out the deck with Stratos. They grab a Mally. They're going to Allure. They draw a double DD Crow, which at this point in the game is completely useless. We draw a Substitute. Now we're just taking our time, right? We got it all. They drew another Mally. That's horrendous. They set the Alias. Now they draw Miracle View. The game's done, right? This game seems pretty much over. That could have been a Wing Blast. We could have been in trouble, but that is just going to be it with 26 exactly. See how the Dupe Frogs, that little bit of damage, always good to note that. Gilman, even though he's a card that you don't want to see in your hand sometimes, he's great to see in your hand when you have complete control of the game and you're just trying to push like that. So, Vanity's Fiend, Dupe Block, obviously this is just an incredible combo. If you happen to have Flip Flop Frog on the field as well, you are in just an absolutely insane spot. So yeah, that's the first game. Let's go to the second game. Going first, always nice, always nice. Okay, this hand is unbelievably good. Again, opening Gores. This hand is insane. This hand is just insane. All the way through. Looks like we're playing X-Sabers. And we're just going to do what we do. Pass like that. And our opponent draws, they don't do anything, surprisingly. I guess it's not that surprising. That's a stupid thing to say. Because if they summon Sangan and swing, they have no protection for a Caius, right? They know we're playing Frogs. They don't know what kind. Sangan is, Caius is just going to win the game, right? So, and we do have the Caius. So, big ups on our opponent. They really have no need to set anything. They have 2 dead cards for the most part, I want to say, because they're probably thinking that Frogs don't play back rows. This is doing nothing yet, but if they get Rescue Cat, they definitely have a lot of synergy in this hand. It's just, Frogs just picks it apart and makes a lot of cards not that good. And I really, with everything we have in this hand, including the Raigeki break for the protection, not knowing what they have at all, I'm okay to just go a little hard right now. I mean, it kind of seems crazy, but what if they drop Gores? We're fine, right? Like, I'm not super worried about that. And, you know, what's the follow-up? If they draw, they try to get rid of the back row, we chain it, kill the token. Now, if we don't know what they're playing, right? We haven't seen a single card yet. At that point, only be MST or Heavy anyway. Next turn, we're going to get Treeborn back. We have Heavy, we have Caius, we have Salvage for Substitute, Duplock, Gores. Like, they can't OTK, so we're completely covered. And you're not going to open like this all the time. I feel like I'm talking at 1,000 words a minute, which is not usually how I speak. But I'm just flying right now because I love this deck and I love how these games have been playing out. So my opponent draws another dead card. They're drawing very badly. We're drawing just insanely well. So we're just going to get it right out of there. And why not just... They didn't drop Gores on the 28th. They probably don't have it. I'm just thinking damage. And that's the game. That's how normal Frog Monarchs, yes, they could do that. But if your opponent doesn't put anything on the field and you don't draw the Stalos, you don't really summon your Monarchs, right? And if you're playing Light and Darkness Dragon, then you are, but that's a interesting card to be playing, right? It's a little bit of a risky card. So this deck lets you really apply pressure without needing Monarchs. And when you do need them, they're great, but you can do it without them. And when you do have them, you can recycle them a lot too, which is fantastic. So our opponent draws a better hand here. Brain Control, Torrential, Raioh, and Ember's Blade mix up. We didn't even see what they were playing. We draw very nicely here. 2 cards we don't really want in our hand. 3 cards we don't really want in our hand. Definitely don't want these guys. And not a great hand. So I'm just going to set Threatening. I really don't have anything to do, right? I'm going to try to force out whatever I think that may be. Could be a Raioh. It's an Ember's Blade. I say that's fine. There's the Arabellum. And we don't want to lose a card out of this hand. But this hand's not great. It wasn't great. Moray helped a lot, and it's still not great. And now they make Highland Lee, and this is important to note that they didn't have to do that. It seemed like they had pretty good board presence right there, and they set 1 back row. And I think about this for a second because they end their turn with just that 1 back row. I draw 1 for 1, which is an insane draw. And I think to myself, this is probably Gotham's Call, which is the only reason they made this play. I don't think they would bluff something like that. And I go through my head how worth it I think it would be to MST this, enforce this, and if I could break this field. And this is what ends up happening with that. I guess we'll go through it in real time too. Now I'm really thinking about this, but 1 for 1ing the flip-flop frog and being able to salvage in Kai's in this scenario and set the Raigeki break. We just have a really, really nice hand here. Maybe we won't go through it in real time because it's taking... I thought about this for a second. So, we're following. Hope I'm not going too fast. They don't DD Crow here, which to me is a little wild, and that would have put me in a terrible spot. Not terrible, but like pretty bad. And I also opt not to send Treeborn, Special Summon Swap, Bounce Back Caius, because I will leave a Swap Frog on field with a Raigeki break. Only card in hand would be Caius to pitch. So they set some cards. Now I know we're in a really good spot. We can get rid of this back row. This is doing nothing. This is a dead card on the field. I draw a gray card. That's unfortunate for us. But if they didn't... It doesn't matter. Yeah, if they didn't DD Crow this, it wouldn't have been a huge deal. We Raigeki break this in the end phase, which was good. If they didn't set a back row, we could have drawn next turn, pitch, Treeborn for Swap Frog, bounce Caius back, tribute the Swap Frog for Caius, remove this attack. But we try to just get rid of the back row and make sure our plays are concise and we get to attack what we want to do, and we're free to do that. They opt only to set that 1 back row, knowing it's a Saber Hole, cool tech, knowing that they're going to DD Crow this, and I may not summon this turn. Little do they know, I top deck like an animal. So with this, I am able to make Dark End. It actually does come up, and I don't want to attack into this. I don't want to give them more range to Ember's Blade or Raioh or anything, or Sangan Cat. So I'm just gonna get Gilman, put some more board presence on the field. Dark End, get the most damage I can over the Arabellum, and then use its effect to send that to the grave. Nice read there, ends up being the Raioh, and now we're in a really good spot. They top deck a Raioh, a little too slow with the Dark End on the field, not a good card, so they set Torrential. Another great draw, nothing we need right now, just going to go for damage. We could summon Swap Frog, send a Treeborn, but why risk it, right? We have all the momentum, all the pressure right now. Their backs are to the wall, so they're forced to set the Raioh. another dead and got him's call. We're just going plus, right? Drawing, swinging, putting pressure on. Dark End Dragon. It's going to use the effect. And I think they just, they're going to scoop it up. Now, it wasn't game. It was only 30. Oh, it is game. It's 33. I'm stupid. Next Sabers, they're really, really good when they do what they're supposed to do. And they did get their Gotham's Call off that game, but when this deck can combo, it just really, really goes hard. And it can combo pretty easily. Let's go through one or two more replays. Alright, so going first, summon Swap Frog, send Treeborn, bounce it back. We're not going to Moray yet, just in case next turn we draw another Treeborn Frog or something we don't want. Swap Frogs are okay to have in the hand. I don't think we need any protection, and we have Threatening Roar anyway, so I just pass. Now our opponent has what normally zombie players would consider a really, really good hand. They summon Goblin Zombie, they swing, they hit Archaeus with the mill, which is pretty unfortunate, but passing is just fantastic. So I'm going to Moray here, put that Unifrog back, try to draw another Caius, which I would really like at this point. I feel very safe with Threatening Roar into Gores or anything. We draw really good cards, but not super scenario specific for where we're at. So I'm just going to drop the Raioh. And there's an argument to be made here that I could have tributed for Raioh, pitch the swap or the Unifrog for my other swap frog, and then bounce this back, set Threatening Roar. But we're going for damage early. That is the way I decided to play this game, and I set the Threatening Roar. And I set my Treeborn. And that turns it pretty interestingly, right? That they just set a monster. So, because of that, yeah, I could have done that turn one, pitch Swap Frog, and then bounce it back, have Threatening Roar. If they try to attack, flip it. Next turn, Treeborn comes back. Tribute the Treeborn for Raioh, put it back on top. Still have a Swap Frog on the field and Raigeki break, so that would have been really, really nice, right? And I wanted to use the Moray, try to get some fresh cards. Those decisions make or break games all the time. So, a little greedy, and I could have got punished for it. Had a very, very safe play with the Swap Frog, pitch, special summon, bounce back. Not opposed to that at all. They end up playing passively. I don't get my Treeborn back, so I just bounce Raioh back, leave Swap Frog on the field, and now I kind of leave the ball in their court a little bit. To which they have a really, really good hand, and they summon Goblin Zombie, which I don't think is a bad play. I Threatening Roar. They set Solemn. And in standby phase before the Treeborn comes back, I'm going to space this back row. I do that often, I notice. If I have it and they have one back row, I will MST, even though sometimes, you know, a nice rule of thumb is like don't just randomly space, but when you have a hand like this, and frogs have it pretty often, I think it's okay. What are they going to chain in that situation? Like, almost nothing, right? Maybe the Phoenix Wing Windblast, and they're going to put Swap Frog on top of my deck. As long as we get Treeborn back, I feel pretty good. So we're able right here to Econ, take the turtle, get back Treeborn, spin that back on top. Armons have not, Swap Frog has not left the field. Raioh has, only cards we want to see the graveyard are seeing the graveyard at this point. and still very free, very protected with Gores. Another back row. Frog wasn't the best draw, but that's fine. And now our opponent has pretty a couple options, right? Book of Life being one thing. They're going to get one frog out of there. And they're going to tribute the turtle. For Caius, get the second frog out of there. Now I'm leaving this Raigeki break for any back row because they're at 22 and I know we have game next turn. So I'm not just going to try to pop this in next turn, tribute swap frog for Ryza, go into torrential or bottomless or something. Nope, we let that attack go through, no problem. We have game, we just have to make sure they have no protection to stop us. They do not, and brain control is going to be the game, even though they got rid of 2 Treeborn frogs. I guess that was only a single game. And as we saw, it could have been played differently. I probably could have played that even better, but even not playing it better, playing it the way that we did, still just enough protection to not be punished. I could have went raise a pitch, a special summon, swap frog, swing, swing, bounce back, set threatening. Yeah, so I don't even want to say it was more of an aggressive play. It was just I wanted to use more of greed more than I wanted to bounce the Ryza back, and I think that's a misplay, and I think it's important to note stuff like that because plays like that come up all the time, and the more you practice with a deck, the more you will see, especially with this deck. Treeborn with the back row, having to play, MST, Raigeki breaks, threatening roars. When you're playing, not having to play, but when you're playing cards like that, you're going to be faced with a lot of questions on if you want to set them or not. And the timing of that, the timing of the mores, a lot of that stuff comes up quite often, and you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot with this deck, and it's very possible to do that. So even though we walk away from this game with a win, you got to be able to learn from the wins as much as you do from the losses and the misplays, because you could lose a game and go, oh, I can't believe I just misplayed like that and I lost, and you'll be kicking yourself. But when you make a major misplay and you still win, you walk out of there going like, yep, got the win, alright, good to go. But you have to remember the misplays. You have to be able to make note of them. That way it doesn't come up in a future scenario and you don't end up shooting yourself in the foot or anything. So let's watch this one more time, just to confirm that that was the right play, because I really do think it's super important to do that. Unifrog and Swap Frog back. And just tribute this for Ryza. Pitch Swap Frog, send Swap Frog. Or summon Swap Frog, send Treeborn. Spin that back 1,024. Swap Frog, bounce the Ryza back, set threatening roar. What's wrong with that? They go to attack, threatening roar, next turn, standby phase, enemy controller. Take their Gores, Treeborn comes back, tribute Ryza. The game's done. The game is done in 2 turns. Don't even give them a chance. Instead, we moray. What are we trying to moray for right here? Now look how ugly this is. This is much, much worse. It looks fine, and it is fine, because these cards are all very, very good, and they do end up getting us exactly where we need to go. If we didn't draw the MST, then who knows, maybe we would have got Solemned, right? Our Ryza would have got Solemned when they draw it, I think next turn or in 2 turns. Definitely not next turn, because they're drawing Goblin Zombie. But they never even would have got to the Solemn, right? Because that would have got spun again. This game is done. Yeah, if you play it the first way, you don't even need to draw the MST. They're never going to draw Solemn. You're never even going to get there. So, yeah. Greedy, Moray of Greed. Right in the name. It's right there. It's so greedy. You have the option to be greedy if you want and see what happens. No punishment. Walk out of this game. Yep, I busted this kid up. Nope. That's dumb. That's a dumb way to think. I should have got punished for that. I don't. I walk away with it unscathed, but better way to play the game. So important to go back and look at all your plays. Can't stress it enough. I think that's going to be it for this video. If you guys have any questions or any feedback, if you want to see anything differently, I hope this wasn't too short of a video. Still probably a good half hour or so between all my babble and nonsense. But yeah, I like the way this video ended up kind of speeding through more games, getting to see more scenarios and whatnot, and seeing what the deck can really do, as opposed to me doing it live. Maybe I'll try like this more from now on. Let me know if you guys enjoyed the video more like this, or if you enjoyed them regardless, if you're just happy to hear me talk about some Yugs. Thanks so much for all the support and for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.